Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO Jay Feitlinger and no-nonsense COO Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. Welcome, everybody, to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hello, Jay.
Hello, Sarah.
I am loving fall in Arizona. We are spoiled rotten, but I think we're supposed to get some rain, and you're probably so happy about it.
Very happy.
I know. We've probably been all over the news with like floods and all the drama, and it's like nobody here knows how to handle it because it doesn't happen very often.
It's not fun here in the summers. I'm so glad this finally the season is changing.
I know. All the fall stuff gets out. I have to say, Arizonans get super jelly when like pumpkins go out because I don't know about you, but you can't buy a pumpkin in Arizona until like the day before Halloween because it'll die in the sun,
Explode.
melt, and rot. Anyway, I'm excited about candy. All right. Well, today we wanted to talk about a topic that is an interesting one because I think there's a lot of schools of thought. There isn't necessarily any wrong schools, but where we've found a little bit of clarity is in boiling it down to one thing. And so we want to share this one thing that accelerates biz dev. And Jay, you've been on both sides of the sales and marketing coin a lot. I'm just curious if we could kind of roll it back a little bit. Where did you find that you became super clear on what biz dev needs, like what sales needs? Was it while you were wearing your sales hat, or was it more when you wore the marketing hat?
Wow. Gosh, that is a hard one to answer. I think it became clearer on the sales side. And I guess why don't I give a little bit of context? Does that work for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, um, when I think about, again, from the string can perspective, and even for our clients when we work with them on this stuff too, I'm always thinking about that, baton passing, handing it off. So there's an efficiency happening between marketing to sales and then sales to ops or whatever you call the onboarding, customer delivery, retention departments. And so I always think about that. And so from the marketing side, it's all about how can we drive details to the salespeople or person so they can do the best job possible on that sales call. So rather than just being, hey, got you a lead, go, instead, there is a lot of insights being provided based upon how that prospective client or customer engaged with the brand from the marketing side. And so I always thought about like what's important there. And then what I did when I got really into sales is I thought about, okay, what are all the questions that, legal and account services and all the various departments that are going to be touching the clients if they do become a client that they need answers to. And I think the biggest aha that I got was is that which I think was a good thing maybe, but I invested way too much energy worrying about everyone else and trying to get through my insane amount of questions in a very limited time. And then I would end these calls. And yes, if that client did move forward because they were interested by the smart questions we've asked or how we can deliver them value. But then I just found that I still didn't truly understand what is the main value we could bring. And so probably since I was getting COVID, I've gotten a lot more efficient in that process because I want to respect people's time. And typically, you only get about 30 minutes maybe in that initial call with a prospective new client to earn some level of trust to get you the next meeting. So I think to answer your question, I know that's a long-winded answer, but I wanted to give context. I think it became very apparent to me in the sales mind because end of the day, my job in sales is to get the next meeting. And if I haven't figured out how to do that and deliver value, then all the other work I just did was a waste of my time and that prospective client's time.
Hmm. And you mentioned, that there's like a lot of questions and usually not enough time. And part of that is because we haven't earned their time with our trust between the two of us to have a long conversation. They, are just kind of testing the waters, as are we, saying we being on the biz dev side of things. the the one who's giving the demo or the discovery or just the initial call, we want to talk about the one thing, but I also want to back up a sec and say, well, what are all the other things that people are trying to cram into that 30 minutes, you know? And just so you guys know, we're not going to read from a script. This is all going to come from our minds because this one is just so fresh and there's so many. And also have perspective because what we do is if I'm on a biz dev receiving call, like I'm the prospect for a tool or a service, which I very often am, I will give that feedback back to Jay or our client services team to help guide those conversations and say, from a prospect, we typically don't get their feedback afterwards and say, well, how was that call? Did I answer your questions? Did that go the way you thought it would? Was it easy? So I always try to feed that piece in. But Jay, I want to start with like your perspective on that side of the table. What are some of the things that you're finding that you really want to get answered in such a short period of time, and then we'll distill down for you all, our lovely audience, what the one thing really should be that you're trying to get to.
Okay, so I'll start with the all the other stuff first, and then we'll jump into that here in a second. Um, I think for me, the part that's really, really challenging or interesting around all of this is that y we aren't mind readers on the business development side, and people come into these meetings with a lot of other perspective. For example, maybe they have a really bad relationship with a current agency or past agency, and so they have pain, and there's a huge gap in trust. Or maybe they were asked to have a meeting with the business development person and they really didn't want to. And so they're coming at it from a very annoyed perspective. There's just so many emotional, mental, possibly physical variables in play here. It makes it really hard. And so obviously the main goal of that, initial, we'll call it discovery call, needs to be understanding their business, them understanding some level of your business, and what's going on in the situation. And so, the things that I love to get to is things like, where do you feel like you have, pain points in marketing or sales? Walk me through, your sales process. Tell me about your ideal client. You go through some really smart essential business questions. So I'm not at all trying to say here these are not important questions to ask. You have to understand all this stuff. But the problem is that again, it's all about respect. If you get in a call with someone, even if they're very eager and wanting to move forward with you, and they give you 30 minutes of their time, you have to find a way in that 30 minutes to develop some level of a relationship based around trust, them learning about you, you're learning about them. And unfortunately, especially when you have people that are very passionate and can be long-winded, there have been numerous calls that I've been on over the years where 20 minutes of that 30-minute call is them just telling me so many things that isn't exactly what I need to know, but they're on a roll, and you obviously don't want it to be condescending or interrupt them because often there is gold that happens within that. But I have found that I often have gone a lot more direct when I set up the calls now, so we don't get, sidetracked, and I require now another 30-minute call. So anyway, so there's a lot of basic business questions about where they are and where they want to go that you have to understand. But you want me to jump into kind of the one thing now?
Not yet. I want to share
Okay.
too, like my side of the equation. There's a little bit of, I think, a lot of sales processes. They know that their time is limited and they want to accelerate your decision. But people can feel that. Like I always feel when I'm getting a canned conversation. And so I think there's this sort of level of how do you also make them feel like you're listening more than you're speaking. But you still need to get answers to those questions because that's part of the trust building process. And I think that's partly why people, share so much with you initially is because it might be one of the few times someone's actually listening to them versus just vomiting on them their tool or their service or whatever they're offering without truly understanding. And I think this piece while it's like the first conversation, it cannot be so understated to say this is really your first opportunity to gain true non-digital trust. And with the AI just explosion, we'll call it, it's more important than ever to try to balance getting the information you need to make really good decisions on what it is they actually need to move their business forward, and also that they feel heard, because if I feel like the conversation was so one-sided, I leave with less trust because I'm like, how can they offer me something when they didn't really even understand or give me a chance to share what it was I really needed? And so, I think acknowledging that that is a skill is first and foremost. So this isn't like a quick fix,
Hmm.
but, getting to that other side of the table, which before we get to the one thing, we also talk about secret shopping a lot too. And we try to have our clients do that because of the experience of being in the sales process. It can really help you empathize and appreciate, especially as a marketer, the kinds of conversations that they're having or the kinds of, you know, um, hang-ups, their sort of hesitations, their needs. And, the whole trust thing, I think my suspicion, my projection is because of, the AI explosion. It's going to become more important and also a lot harder to gain in the future because people are going to be way more skeptical than they ever have been.
I
So
agree,
for you to get
100%.
the answer to this one question is going to be it's going to be hard. So let's drop the one thing and why it is we think this is the one thing you need from your prospects.
Yeah, and I think there, just to touch on one thing you said before, I totally agree with you, and then I'll jump into that in a second here. But, you know, um, obviously my adjustments to my process has changed and evolved over the years, but I heavily rely on, things like books. Like, and I always think about like Harvey McKay's, the 66, McKay type of things they need to understand. And what is amazing about the world that we live in now is there's so much information you can get before you even get on the call. So I think, to be honest, the reason why my business development discovery calls often go so well is I do my homework. And again, I'm sure, Sarah, you've been on the receiving end much more than me, but it's never more frustrating when I get on a call with someone that wants to meet with me and they're like, "Where do you live? What does your company do?" And I'm just like in my head, I'm rolling my eyes because I just feel like now they're just wasting my time. And I just feel like they go through this templatized script. And I think, to your point, I really appreciate that we're not doing a script with a lot of our podcasts because a lot of this can feel, I think, more authentic and raw when you talk about it, right off the cuff. And so, to your point, I think for me, again, I come in these calls well prepared, so I understand their business. And I set up a framework when I get on these calls, so they understand what I'm going to try to get to. And I do say to them, look, we have 30 minutes and I want to respect your time. And so I want to make sure that we reserve the last few minutes. If both of us feel that there's a good fit here, the next meeting, we would get in a lot more detail. But really, I have two main goals that I want to accomplish today. The first thing is I do want to understand some of your business goals, where you are and where you want to go. But at the end of the day, for me to deliver you value, we have learned over the years the one most important thing that I need to understand is if we do move forward and provide you support around your marketing and sales efforts, what does that mean to your bottom line? And so I kind of reverse engineer off of that as like for every new client that you bring on, what is the value, in that year and or lifetime value? And I find that if I can get the client comfortable and kind of explaining to me the monetization efforts of their business and how the economic engine works, then I could on my own figure out so many ways how we can deliver value. But if I get on these calls and I do not understand that before the 30 minutes is up, I just wasted their time and mine because I will have a really hard time figuring out what we should do that's going to generate them ROI because I love when we go into these new client opportunities and figure out how can we do a 3 to 10 times ROI return on their investment. I feel like no matter what your business is, there has to be a way for you to understand the service or product you offer and how it improves the economic engine of that business. And if you can't confidently articulate how you can help there, I feel like you're going to have a very likely short term relationship. And obviously, again, most businesses have significant increase in their valuation when they have a recurring revenue stream. And that's why I think for us, the long-term relationship that we have with our clients, we have clients now we've worked with for what, 10 plus years. Again, I think the value that we bring them obviously must be very high for them to stay with us. But on our end, the value is huge to our business and our bottom line.
Yeah, it's a question that I think has multiple layers too, because it reminds me a little bit of when I interview candidates. I want to make sure they can answer that question. So when you're asking a prospect, what is the value to your bottom line? If they don't have an answer to that question, how do you respond to that?
It's interesting. So depending upon who I'm talking to, and it's a great question, Sarah, and I appreciate that one. Obviously, I ebb and flow. So, if I'm talking to like the CEO or founder, their insights into that question are so different than if they're like a chief marketing officer or a VP of marketing. And so, again, it's very telling for me alone because I got to tell you, I've spoken with many C-level executives at significant size companies, and I can ask a basic question like, what is the value of one new customer to your business? And they really struggle because especially that alone is telling to me, does it mean that they have just too of a broad offering where they're servicing too many different types of business, everything from startups to enterprise and everything in between. So I think for me, that question can be hard, but if they struggle, obviously I don't want to come across, condescending and or make them feel uncomfortable. So then I will then dive right into, well, let's figure it out together. So walk me through, how much you sell your product or service for. And they might be like, oh, our typical engagement is, $18,000. And then I'm like, okay, once you sell that first engagement, then what happens from there? Oh, well, then they sign up and every year they do another $250,000 of business. So then I'm like, okay, and how long do they stay with you? Typically 3 years. So I'm like, okay, now we're looking at, let's say, $800,000 of value to your business for every client you close. Is that fair? And they're like, yes. And we probably have clients that are 2 to 3 times that when they're a whale. So then I go off of that mindset of, okay, so the value is every new client you bring on is worth around $800,000. Then what would be a worthy investment? And then you kind of can go backwards from there.
You know, I think too, like a lot of the other questions that can get asked, it's almost like you need to find the question inception too, because I like how you work backwards from that to help them unpack their pain, right? And that's part of the deal is the sales process is supposed to make you and them feel the pain on the same level. And yes, I can help you solve that pain. And what is it worth to you? And I think the way we approach it is a little more long term because there is a level of patience that is required with marketing. We say this over and over again, but I still think for some reason, partly because our culture is so we wanted everything done yesterday, this instant gratification. Marketing kind of gets looped into that because there are platforms that you can get that. But we're trying to build this long term one relationship. That's number one. We've always been about that. And it's partly, I think, why the 10-year clients stay with us because they value the relationship and we show them we value the relationship too. And I was thinking about a story then you'll remember this. We were working with we'll call it a financial company. We are their client, and they had pivoted contacts, we'll say. And I had a meeting with one of the new contact. And I came into the meeting and he goes, "So, Sarah, tell me what you do." And I was like, "No, no, we are not having this call." And it was kind of a rough day. It was a rough week. I was feeling very stressed, lots of meetings. And I said, "We're not having this call. And I'm really sorry that we scheduled this, but I was hoping you would come into this a lot more prepared." And I think there's also this level of biz dev inside an organization too. Like, take the information and continue along with it. Is this still true? And so, taking that question that you asked, we then feed it back into our meetings and turn it into part of the business operating within the client's scope. So, can we still then answer that question with them and help them see the ROI or the value or whatever it is that's important to them after they've answered that question? It shouldn't just
Hmm.
go into a black hole, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I think again, it does take experience and confidence to be able to adjust because again, you're dealing with humans here. It'd be funny one day we have AI selling to AI. But I think for the short term, that's where I think we excel at is we have an amazing process we follow, and then we teach that same process to our clients. And it is obviously very, proud moments for me when I see our clients that are really struggling with all of this, and then we kind of walk them through, basically kind of teach them to fish. And I think to your point there is that, we do our due diligence. We come in, we're very direct regarding the process. And we also do say to them that if we both feel there's a good fit here, the next meeting we have, we're going to dive in even deeper. So that way they don't feel like we have to get all this stuff done in that first call and they don't feel rushed and or not heard. And so again, I think for me, the person that's speaking the most is the one that's kind of, losing sometimes. And so for me, I try really hard to ask really smart questions, but they are focused and allow them to really elaborate and talk about it. And based upon their answers, then I will adjust accordingly because I think for us, a big part of what we have to do, and I think a lot of other service companies are probably similar, is how can you reduce the friction in what's causing them leaks around their revenue? And I think for us, we might find a client saying, "Oh, well, we can't have our salespeople do all of that research beforehand because, we have just too many leads and it's just too time consuming." So I'm like, okay, so is the issue that you have too many leads? We need to get you less leads that are higher quality, or do we need to find a better way to pass the baton from marketing to sales? And I think for us, again, these questions that we ask, I find are so telling because we immediately figure out how can we deliver value fast. And that is what I believe starts developing trust fast or faster. Because again, they don't know us from, anyone. I mean, it's like there's so many other firms out there like us. But I think the reason why we retain our clients for so long is that we are really methodical in how we're constantly working at earning and growing on the level of trust we have with them and finding really smart ways efficiently to deliver value quickly and profitably for their business. So I think the way we structure a lot of our questions in every meeting we have, both during the business development and the onboarding and the retention side, I think are very intentional. And I think that's why our clients feel really comfortable kind of working through that process with us.
And back to the homework piece, I think people can tell when you've done your homework, and they can also tell when it feels like the prospect is the one who has to provide all the information. That doesn't feel good because already you're like, well, they're going to rely on me to move all this stuff forward. They are not putting in any of the effort. Do they even care? And I think the homework piece, there's going to be zero excuse to not have your homework done because AI, there's already agents and built-in tools and prospecting tools, even in HubSpot, where that stuff can be 90% done for you. So you have no excuse to come into a call totally blind, and you shouldn't. Like, no manager should be okay with that anyway. You want to have a confidence, and that comes with knowledge and information. And when you go into the call feeling confident, feeling informed, you understand and you can empathize and you really put yourself in their shoes, I think you can get the answer to that question because you've earned it. So you have to earn it before you even get into the call and then do all the things that we've suggested, but really getting that lifetime value of the customer answer can guide so many other questions. So don't think about how you need all these questions answered. Can you get one really solid question answered and then come back to the next meeting with here's how we work backwards from that with all of the things to solve their problems.
Yeah, and I think again to be fair, and obviously we've always been pretty transparent, we have not always been great at this. Again, I think Sarah, that's why I love when me and you talk after you have these various different calls. because I hear things from your point of view, and often the people I'm speaking to have very similar mindset or role as you, especially if they're on the operational side of the business. And I'll never forget, again, this was obviously a year or two before COVID when we were just trying to figure out a way to improve our biz dev process. I think I even said back then, okay, everyone wants me to get all these questions answered. I can't do it in 30 minutes without sounding like a freaking robot and or ignoring what they're saying. So let's figure out the solution how I can get an hour versus 30 minutes, which is the wrong way to think about things. And so I think again, it's like we basically, as we do with every problem we have in this business for ourselves and our clients, I love that we don't say the answer is more time, or maybe asking the person to do more homework. And if you remember from that, we were like, oh, why don't we, before the discovery call, send them a list of our 15 questions? And yes, that might work here and there for people that are very kind of more of an integrator mind, might actually appreciate that. But the problem is, it's like those 15 questions could turn into 50 questions based upon the answer to one of those questions. And so I just really appreciate how empathetic and strategic we are over year because we basically say, look, what if you can't get 30 more minutes? And what if you can't burden the prospect to have them do all this homework? Like, what are other solutions? And really, what do you have to get done or answered before you get the next meeting? And that really is the ultimate goal. It's like, I want to secure confidently another meeting with this prospect and show them how we can deliver insane value. But what do I really, really, really need to understand before I can have confidence doing that? And that's where I think this one thing has been so powerful in my mind by me setting up the stage on every call, coming in prepared, setting up the framework for how the meeting is going to go and what the outcome is going to be. I would say it's not 100%, but I would say easily 85% plus of people on that call, if I did my process correctly, will be like, I'm excited now for the next call versus it being like a drain. It's like, oh, one more meeting with this stupid, marketing guy. So it just makes my job so much more fun because I could feel them getting great ideas and value at every touch point working with us. And I feel like with our clients, we do the same thing. It's just so much more fun and making that relationship more powerful that way.
Yeah, I love this. All right. Well, I do, you mentioned the 5 leaks and friction, and we did put out a book last week, I think, or the week before, October 10th, called Revenue Rewired, and it's a playbook. And so it's a nice, quick read, but it's packed with action stuff. So if you have an integrator, they will love you. You might not love them with all the changes they're going to want to make, but they're good changes, and so you'll want to make them. But that we're passionate enough about, Revenue Rewired, the book, and we hope that that drives value for you all, as does this conversation. So please shoot us an email. We're happy to answer any questions. Anything else to add, Jay?
No, I'm excited that we're just getting really focused and try not to make our, listeners and clients, feel like they're drinking from the fire hose. It just feels a lot more easier in my mind when you go into every single meeting and call with, I got to just accomplish one thing. I don't know why, just for me, it feels like a huge weight is lifted off my shoulders. And once I explain that to the various different departments, everyone seems to agree. So it's much more exciting that way.
Yeah, less is more. Less is more.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great day. Have a great day, Jay.
Bye, Sarah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.